Thank you, Nina, and thank you for that powerful story and the sharing of your own vulnerability.
And thank you, Kenny, for your beautiful articulation of the gender crisis that is really tantamount to a kind of gender apartheid between men and women that afflicts every culture across the globe. We have founded Gender Reconciliation International as a response to the question, are there parallels between exploitation of the earth and exploitation of the feminine? And as you all know, we've had the women's movement and the men's movement, and both are very important and must continue. But in gender reconciliation, we take a step beyond both to bring women and men together to begin an integral healing work.
Gender reconciliation is open to people of all sexual orientations, and we've been invited to into many different countries, actually 6 continents, over the past 21 years. And we most recently have been invited to partner with the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation.
We are applying principles of truth and reconciliation to transform gender apartheid, because both men and women are afflicted by gender injustice, and each needs the other for a true and complete healing.
So now we'd like to invite you into a 2-minute exercise to give you a brief introduction of what gender reconciliation is all about. We're all born identified as either a boy or a girl, but nowadays we honor the broad spectrum of gender identities and sexual orientations that are breaking down these rigid binary categories of male and female. Nevertheless, as children, we were raised as either boys or girls, and for this exercise, we invite you to respond to these questions according to that conditioning in your own life and your own childhood. So let's begin, and I'd like to begin by asking all the women to please raise your hand so we can get a sense of how many women there are in the audience. Take a look around. See all the hands raised. I wonder if we can have the lights raised in the house. Thank you.
And now we'd like to ask all of the men to please raise your hands. The men in the audience, please raise your hands. Take a look around. You can see how many men there are.
Now we will ask a few questions, and we invite you to raise your hand if the question applies to you. I will ask the question of the women, and will ask the questions of the men. Please know that you are not required to raise your hand. This is an invitation, but you're invited to do so. And if you decide not to raise your hand, however, to raise your hand or stand within yourself, and don't push it down, but acknowledge the truth of the question and the answer within yourself. Please keep your hand up until we say thank you, and that will be your cue to let it down, to take it down. So here's the first question for the women. Please raise your hand if you have ever been afraid to walk the streets alone because you are a woman. And take a look around. Thank you.
And here's the first question for the men. Please raise your hand if you have ever been afraid to walk the streets alone because you are a man. Take a look around. Thank you.
So the second question for the women. Please raise your hand if when you were a child or a young woman, you ever feared or lamented that you might have to fight or die for your country. Please raise your hand if when you were a child or a young woman, you ever feared or lamented that you might have to fight or die for your country. Raise your hand if that applies. Take a look around. Thank you.
And now the second question for the men. Please raise your hand if when you were a child or a young man, you ever feared or lamented that you might have to fight or die for your country. Take a look around. Thank you.
And the last question for the women. Please raise your hand if you have ever not spoken up for fear of sounding smarter than a man. And take a look around.
And last question for the men. Please raise your hand if you have ever not spoken up for fear of sounding smarter than a woman. Thank you.
So now we just invite you to take a moment of silent reflection, just a few seconds. We invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or have a soft gaze downward. What did you notice? What has stirred in you? What do these discrepancies tell you about your own life, about your relationships, about your daughters or your sons, your partners or spouses?
And we now invite you to take exactly 30 seconds to turn to the person next to you and share whatever this exercise might have brought up for you. So go ahead and begin. Okay, and make sure the other person gets a chance. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. If we could return to silence, and we'll just close with a very simple chant. I'll start with the men. I'd like the men to join me in an Om. Men only, please. Let's do an Om. Oh, sing it out. Oh.
And now with the women, a Ma. Ma.
And now everyone, men Om, women Ma. Sing it out. A what? Sure.
Yes.
What is it?
Do you have one?
Trans. Okay, so let's do a trans Om Ma. Om Ma. Trans. Thank you.